It's quite an exciting time for the Death Guard, a big release right at the start of 8th, then not a lot in the intervening time, and now Psychic Awakening and 9th edition all in one go. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we've been going through the new rules and previews for 9th edition as they come out. Today we'll be talking about Games Workshop's faction focused 9th edition and adding in a fair few of my own thoughts about what sort of rules might impact the faction, both in positive and negative ways, going into the new edition. Death Guard are a faction that were at least fairly strong when they came out, but the inevitable power creep over the course of 8th has left them at a bit of a disadvantage compared with the other armies. With a decent new slew of options from Psychic Awakening, let's talk about how some of the previewed changes from 9th might impact on them. So first of all, the command point changes are one of the most important things that are going to be happening in 9th, and Death Guard, like the vast majority of the more elite armies, looks like they're going to be on one of the positive sides of this. In general, if you're playing pure Death Guard, I don't think all that many people were running a brigade or 3 battalions, so getting 12 CP to start with, and gaining 1 per turn seems like it's generally going to be a step up if you can fit it into 1 detachment. I think in general this will be the case, but it does go against some of their other priorities, such as maybe getting in some allied demons for things like Nurglings or Psychic Power Synergy, or being able to access multiple plague companies from War of the Spider, either of which could still be worth sacrificing a few command points for. We'll have to wait until we see the entire system laid out. In general though, having a few more command points I think will be a big buff for the faction, particularly as they've just been blessed with a ridiculous amount of stratagems from War of the Spider, including all the ones from the Plague Companies. I think they got 35 new options for stratagems, so I think Death Guard are going to be one of the armies where learning those and using which one to apply in the right situation is going to give you a decent leg up on your opponents. I think in general the smaller minimum board size will be a positive for the Death Guard. In general they tend to specialise in slower moving, slightly shorter ranged units that use decent durability to close with the foe and deal damage to them. If you're playing on one of these smaller minimum tables, the enemies are going to have less space to back off into, and in general that will be a positive for the faction. With some of the new objective changes that we've seen at the moment, there are going to be certain actions that your units can do, where they just basically have to sit around doing nothing on an objective for a turn, and having troops that are far weighted towards durability rather than damage output is pretty good for this. Opponents are going to have to dedicate a really strong amount of firepower to shifting, say, a 5-man squad of Plague Marines, compared with just, say, a unit of Tactical Marines from Codex Space Marines. I think Death Guard are looking like they're in a better shape before for scoring objectives, particularly with more emphasis from War of the Spider being on big blobs of Plague Marines, which are going to be a bit of a nightmare to shift off objectives. I think increased line of sight blocking terrain could really help tip their durability over the edge. There's going to be plenty of armies that are going to struggle to chew through a maxed out durability Death Guard list over the course of the game, and if you basically can deny them an entire round of shooting at the start of the game because you're mainly setting up out of line of sight then moving into it, then you could potentially save yourself an all-important turn of the enemy doing damage, hopefully meaning that you could be around scoring objectives till late into the game. Compared with other factions, I think they come out on top as well in the character targeting rules. Death Guard are very unhelpfully one of those factions that don't really have any access to sniper weapons, so now characters are a little bit easier to gun down. You might just be able to focus fire the units around an important character and then shoot them down with conventional weapons. If they're easier to shoot normally, then it kind of rewards the factions that don't have access to decent sniper weapons already just that little bit more. Conversely, most Death Guard characters, even support ones, tend to be at least fairly tough, so they're not going to be taken down quite as trivially if isolated, compared with most regular Space Marine characters, or more fragile units such as Eldar for example. It's going to be interesting to see what all of these changes make when combined with all the options from War of the Spider. There are certainly some very solid options in there, such as reduced damage or better accuracy for Terminators, and multiple ways to get more out of buffing characters. Seeing as quite a lot is changing, there might be other stratagems in there that really come to the fore with the new edition. In terms of units I've got my eye on, one big question is how Mortarion will fare in the new edition. The line of sight blocking rules haven't really been very kind to him, seeing as he will be able to be targeted, as he comes down on just the wrong side of the line of sight blocking terrain rules. Unfortunately, Mortarion himself didn't really get any buffs from War of the Spider, but one thing that I think would be quite interesting is if he manages to get some use out of the Strategic Reserves rule. Being able to outflank him off the table could be a decent delivery system, maybe outflanking at the same time as some Terminator's Deep Strike. It'll at least stop him getting shot off the table turn 1 in any case. In general though, I think some of the combat buffs will really help him out. Having to wade through less Overwatch is always nice. Again, smaller board sizes will allow him to catch people up a little bit easier, and I guess there's always the chance that his points cost might come back pretty favourably as well. I think between the synergies of War of the Spider and the addition things that we've seen so far, are that Plague Marines and large Terminator units are going to be really quite strong for the Death Guard going into the next edition, particularly with a raft of the minor Death Guard support characters that can often be upgraded to give even more powerful buffs from War of the Spider. Things like re-rolling 1s and 2s on Disgusting and Resilience makes Plague Surgeons a lot more relevant, and Plague Marines getting 5+ invul saves is pretty powerful. It seems like it'd work out quite well with the new stratagems, with big units of Plague Marines getting maximal use out of very efficient stratagems, such as their deadly blight grenades, or even just all the bolter synergies that you can stack on them now. And similar with more damage output for the Terminators. Having some pretty huge units should hopefully mean that the characters won't be able to be targeted as per those new character targeting rules, but it does mean that they could potentially be a bit more vulnerable to blast weapons, as 11 or more models could mean that you're being hit by max shots with things like battle cannons, which is never going to be a good thing. We talked about it earlier today, but along with this Death Star type setup, you can use things like Foul Blight spawns to rob their enemy units of their charging bonuses, and with the rule that was previewed today, it means that Death Guard Death Star units will be able to fight first if their opponent is charging, if they have a Blight spawn about to rob them of that charge benefit. Even if he is not around though, it does mean that your opponent engaging very durable units of Terminators and things could be a pretty painful experience. One of my favourite units in the Death Guard are the Plagueburst crawlers, just because of how ludicrously durable they are, and can continue just eating away at the enemy with solid damage turn on turn. A whole ton of the 9th edition changes really seem to have been kind to them. First of all, the Plagueburst mortar is a blast weapon, which will make it better against hordes. There'll be no penalties to moving and shooting with a Plagueburst mortar or entropy cannons, and now if you are using them aggressively with those plague spewers, if the enemy does decide to lock them up to try and stop them dealing as much damage, you'll just be able to blaze away with them in close combat just as normal. These guys are looking like even more of a nightmare to deal with in 9th edition, and on top of that they've got some great options from War of the Spider. One of the Plague companies can give them a 4+ invul save, which is just pretty horrendous when combined with their already excellent durability, and there's a stratagem that really amps up their entropy cannons as well, which is just one command point to make entropy cannons significantly stronger, and that could last all game if the relevant crawler isn't taken out. Unless they take a massive points hike in 9th edition, then I think that these guys could be even more prevalent in lists than they are at the moment. In general though, I would hope that points changes are going to be quite nice to the Death Guard. Generally Games Workshop seems to write their balance updates around about 6 months in advance, just so they can get the books to the printers and everything. Now things like Grey Knights and Space Wolves got big buffs. I would consider Death Guard one of the weaker armies in the game, at least before War of the Spider. I'd say that this could mean that they get some slightly preferential treatment when it comes to points changes. It certainly wouldn't go amiss on some units that are just a little bit underwhelming point for point now. I guess that's something that we'll have to wait and see. I will be hoping to go through most armies' points cost changes when 9th edition drops. So overall, a lot of changes for the Death Guard in a very short space of time. I'm not saying that they're immediately going to jump up to top tier, but I would say that they seem to be closing the gap quite a bit compared with their competitors between the 9th previews and their Psychic Awakening changes. If you have any other thoughts about how they might be looking in 9th at the moment, then feel free to let us know down in the comments. And if you've been enjoying these 9th edition previews, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll most certainly keep up covering the news as it comes out. If you've enjoyed the video, I'd just like to mention that I do have a Patreon page, which allows me to dedicate quite so much time to video production and away from my regular job. If you are watching regularly, then any support is greatly appreciated. The link is down in the description below. Patrons get to see several videos early, they get to vote in regular polls to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and there's also prize draws, where I post out some miniatures each month. If any of that sounds good, or you just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.